My sister didn't just steal my fiancé. She built her perfect life with the money my dad left for me. But when I found the forged paper behind her wedding, I walked in with proof and took back everything they thought I'd never fight for. My name is Maren Ashford, and at 32, I was working nights in the basement of St. Bridget Medical Center, washing blood from surgical tools while my sister was planning a waterfront wedding with the man who used to call me his future. For months, I thought losing Hayes Riddick was the worst thing they had done to me. I thought betrayal meant watching your younger sister smile with your engagement ring style on her finger while your mother told you to be mature about it. Then a venue manager looked at me across a marble counter and thanked me for paying the wedding deposit. That was the moment I learned my sister had not just taken my fiancé. She had bought a new life with him using the money my father left for me. And by the time I was done, her wedding was no longer a celebration. It was evidence. Bellingham, Washington is beautiful in a way that can make sadness look peaceful. Rain sits on the windows. The bay turns silver in the morning. Cedar trees lean over old roads like they are keeping family secrets. I grew up there, in a small blue house my father, Maren Ashford, fixed with his own hands. He owned a little marine repair shop near the harbor, the kind of place where men brought broken engines and left with coffee, advice, and a bill my father always made fair. He died when I was 26, too fast for any of us to prepare. One Friday, he was arguing with a boat motor. By Sunday night, he was gone from a stroke that took him before the ambulance reached the bridge. After the funeral, my mother, Laurel, handled everything. She said I was too tired. She said grief made paperwork dangerous. I believed her because grief had turned me into a person who nodded when people told me where to sign. 6 years later, I was still living like a woman who had missed the one door that might have opened. I worked full-time as a sterile processing technician, which is a quiet job most patients never think about. Every clamp, every tray, every sharp little instrument that touches a body in surgery has to pass through hands like mine first. I scrubbed, counted, wrapped, labeled, and loaded steel into machines that steamed loud enough to drown out my own thoughts. On my days off, I picked up shifts at a dental surgery center. I had one pair of good work shoes, a car that groaned at stoplights, and a bank account I checked the way nervous people check weather alerts. I was not helpless. I paid my bills. I kept my head down. I told myself I was building something, though most months all I built was a way to survive the next one. Hayes used to say he loved that about me. He said I was steady. He said I made life feel clean and possible. We were engaged for almost 3 years, long enough for me to stop imagining my future without him in it. Then he started needing space. He said money was tight. He said my schedule made him lonely. He said I was always tired, always practical, always thinking about rent and repairs instead of romance. I apologized for things that were not crimes. I tried to be easier. Then, one evening, he sat across from me in a taco place near the marina and said he could not marry someone who made love feel like another responsibility. 5 months later, my sister Keely walked into my mother's house wearing a diamond and told me she and Hayes were getting married in September. Nobody screamed. That was the first strange thing. My mother cried happy tears, not shocked ones. Hayes stood near the fireplace with his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor like a man who had already practiced the scene. Keely held her left hand out for our aunt to admire and said, "I know this is awkward, but love doesn't always follow the plan." Then my mother touched my shoulder and whispered, "Do not make this ugly, Maren. You were always stronger than Keely." I remember that sentence more than the ring. You were always stronger. In our family, stronger meant easier to take from. Stronger meant you could be hurt and still be expected to pass the salad. I went to the bridal shower because I still had not learned the difference between peace and surrender. It was held at a bright little restaurant with white chairs and lemon water in glass pitchers. Keely wore cream and laughed like the room had been built around her. Hayes kissed her forehead in front of everyone, the same soft public kiss he used to give me at farmers' markets when he wanted strangers to know we belonged together. My mother kept watching me, not with concern, but with warning. When Keely opened a set of expensive copper pans, she looked at me and said, "Maren never cared about pretty home things. She's always been more of a practical person." People laughed lightly, the way people laugh when cruelty is wrapped in a bow. I smiled because I did not trust my mouth with anything else. The first crack came 2 weeks later. My mother called while I was leaving the hospital after a double shift and asked me to drop off a box of framed childhood photos at the wedding venue. She said Keely forgot them and the venue needed them for a memory table. I almost said no. My feet hurt. My scrub top smelled like detergent and metal. But the venue was on my way home, and saying no to my mother still felt like pushing a heavy door uphill. So I drove to Bay Glass Hall, a renovated cannery turned wedding space with tall windows facing the water. Everything inside was polished wood, soft gold lights, and money pretending to be taste. The manager, Rilla Crossley, met me near the lobby desk. She was a neat woman with silver hair cut to her jaw and a voice that sounded trained to calm angry brides. I gave her the box. She checked a tablet, smiled, and said, "You must be Maren Ashford?" I nodded, already turning to leave. Then she added, "I've been meaning to thank you. Your father's fund covered the ballroom deposit beautifully. It made the booking much easier." I stopped so fast the strap of my tote slid down my arm. "My father's what?" I asked. Rilla's face changed, just a little. Professional people know when they have stepped on a wire. She looked back at her tablet. "The Ashford Legacy Home Fund," she said slowly. "It's listed as the authorized source for several payments. I'm sorry. I assumed you knew." There are moments when the body understands danger before the mind can name it. Mine went cold from the neck down. I asked to see the file. Rilla said she could not release financial documents without authorization, but she did print a basic vendor summary because my name was on the account note. It was only 1 page, no bank numbers, no full contracts, nothing dramatic. But halfway down, under payment source, it said, Ashford Legacy Home Fund, authorized by Maren Ashford. Below that was a deposit amount that made my stomach turn. $38,000 for a wedding room. I had spent the morning deciding whether to replace my cracked windshield or pay my electric bill early. My sister had spent more than my yearly rent on candles, chairs, and a view of the bay with money tied to my name. I called my mother from my car. Rain tapped the windshield while the vendor summary shook in my hand. I kept my voice calm, because calm was the only weapon I owned at that moment. "Mom," I said, "what is the Ashford Legacy Home Fund?" Silence came first, not long, but long enough to tell the truth. Then Laurel laughed softly, the tired laugh she used when she wanted me to feel foolish. "Where did you hear that?" "The wedding venue." Another pause. "Maren, you misunderstood something. You're exhausted. You always get intense when money is involved." There it was, the old fog machine. I asked again. This time her voice hardened. "Your father did not leave you some secret fortune. Don't start acting greedy because your sister is happy." Greedy. I sat in the dark car and looked at that word from the outside. I had eaten peanut butter with a spoon for dinner the week before payday. Keely was ordering imported flowers with a fund carrying my father's name. And I was greedy for asking what it meant. I did not argue. I did not accuse. I said, "Okay," and hung up. Then I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed everything exactly as I remembered it. Rilla's words, The payment amount, my mother's pauses, her use of the word greedy. When people want you confused, the first act of revenge is to become accurate. The next morning, I went to the storage unit where my father's shop records had been sitting in cardboard boxes since we sold the business equipment. My mother always said there was nothing important in them. Mostly she was right. Old invoices, manuals for engines no one made anymore, coffee-stained notebooks in my father's blocky handwriting. I almost gave up after 2 hours. Then I found a small cedar box tucked inside a carton labeled taxes. It had a brass latch and a key taped to the bottom. Inside were 3 things: a receipt from Pike and Vale estate law, a folded note in my father's handwriting, and a small photograph of me at 19 standing in front of a rundown cottage near the bay. I remembered that day. Dad had pointed to the cottage and said, "A person needs one safe place, not a fancy one, a safe one." His note was short. "Maren, if this box is in your hands, ask Imogen Pike about your first safe place. Do not let anyone tell you that being strong means needing nothing. Dad." I read it once standing, then I sat on the concrete floor and read it again with my hand over my mouth. It was the first time in 6 years I felt my father in the room, not as a memory, but as a witness. He had known something about me my living family kept denying. He had known I would need help. He had not loved me less because of it. Imogen Pike's office sat above a bookstore downtown. She was in her late 50s, with dark glasses, silver-threaded hair, and the kind of stillness that made you sit straighter without being asked. I expected warmth because she had known my father. Instead, she gave me something better. She gave me facts. She opened an old file, read for a few minutes, and then looked at me with an expression I did not like. "Your father created the Ashford Legacy Home Fund 18 months before he died," she said. "Restricted purpose, housing, education, emergency stability, beneficiary, you. He funded it through the sale of a shop asset and a life insurance allocation. Original amount was $232,000. I could not speak. That number did not feel real. It felt like a door I had been sleeping beside for years without knowing it had a handle. Imogen turned another page. "According to the later file, you signed a gift authorization transferring control of the remaining fund balance to your sister for family use." I heard a small sound and realized it came from me. "I never signed that." She slid a copy across the desk. My name sat at the bottom in a loose, pretty version of cursive I had never used in my life. Above it, the document said I freely gifted the fund to Keely Ashford as a family blessing for her marriage and future home. Family blessing. Those 2 words hit harder than the number. They had used my name to bless the marriage that broke me. Imogen watched my face and said, "If you did not sign this, Maren, then this is not a misunderstanding. This is evidence." The notary stamp belonged to a man named Silas Brannock at a small title office in Ferndale. Imogen told me not to contact him yet. "People destroy things when they hear footsteps," she said. Instead, she helped me request records the right way. She also referred me to Eamon Stiles, a forensic bookkeeper who worked out of a narrow office behind a tax preparation shop. Eamon had red hair, tired eyes, and a habit of speaking in clean, simple sentences. He told me, "Money tells a story. People just hope you stop reading before the ending." I gave him the vendor summary, the gift letter, my father's note, and every date I could remember. He told me to get my hospital timecard for the date on the notary stamp. That was the first solid brick in the wall. On the day the gift letter claimed I had appeared in front of Silas Brannock, I was clocked in at St. Brigid from 2:11 p.m. to 11:03 p.m. The notary time was 3:40 p.m. At 3:40 p.m., I was not in Ferndale signing away my father's fund. I was in sterile processing, assembling 2 orthopedic trays and arguing with a missing retractor count. My supervisor pulled the electronic record and signed a statement without asking too many questions. She only said, "I hope whoever did this gets what paperwork can give them." That sentence stayed with me. Not revenge, paperwork, the slow, clean language of consequences. Eamon's first report came 3 days later. The fund had been drained in 5 major movements. The wedding venue, a condo down payment for Keeley and Hayes near the marina, a wire to Hayes' new consulting business, payments to a bridal designer in Seattle, and a large credit card payoff under my mother's name. Each payment used the forged gift authorization as support. Hayes had not been standing near the crime. He had been inside it. The condo file included an email from him to the lender, explaining that Maren's gift is a family contribution with no repayment expected. My hands did not shake when I read it. That surprised me. Maybe some pain is so sharp it cauterizes itself. Before I confronted anyone, I gave my mother one chance to tell the truth. I went to her house on a Sunday afternoon when Keeley was at a dress fitting and Hayes was, according to social media, tasting cake flavors with her. Laurel opened the door and looked annoyed before she looked worried. I sat at the kitchen table where my father used to fix fishing reels and placed a copy of the gift letter between us. "I did not sign this," I said. She did not pick it up. Her eyes moved over it once, fast. "Maren, this is bigger than you." That was not denial. That was permission she had given herself. "Dad left that money for me?" She pressed her fingers to her temples. "Your father wanted the family safe. Keeley had a chance at a real home. Hayes had a business plan. You had a job. You always land on your feet." There it was again. Stronger, practical, fine. Words people use when they want to take from you without feeling like thieves. "You used my father's money to help my sister marry my fiancé," I said. Laurel flinched at fiancé, not at money. That told me something. "Hayes was not yours anymore," she said quietly. "And Keeley loves him in a way you never knew how to. She needed a beginning." I waited. My mother looked toward the living room, where a framed picture of my father still sat on the mantel. "I was trying to keep something beautiful in this family," she said. "After your father died, everything became bills and grief and ugly choices." For 1 second, I saw the tired widow under the crime. I saw a woman who had been scared and lonely and angry at life for taking her husband. Then I remembered the word blessing written above my forged name. Her pain was real. It still did not belong to me as debt. I left without telling her what I had. That was the hardest part. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I wanted the relief of being loud. I wanted to throw the paper down and say every sentence I had swallowed for years. But Imogen had warned me, do not trade a strong case for a strong moment. So I drove home in the rain and put my mother's words in my notes. You had a job. Keeley needed a beginning. Hayes was not yours anymore. I did not know yet how useful those sentences would become. Keeley called that night. Her voice was bright in a way that meant my mother had told her something. "Mom says you're acting weird about the wedding money," she said. I stood in my kitchen, looking at the cracked tile by the sink and let her talk. "I know this has been hard for you, but you can't keep punishing everyone because Hayes chose differently." I asked one question. "Did you know Dad left that fund for me?" The brightness dropped. "Dad left things for the family." "That is not what I asked." She exhaled sharply. "You would have wasted it on some sad little rental or more classes. Hayes and I are building something. We are actually using it." There it was, spoken clearer than any confession could have been. In Keeley's mind, my future had been raw material. Hers was the finished product. 2 weeks before the wedding, Eamon found the piece that turned the whole story. Hayes had drafted the language for the gift letter. Not guessed, not helped after the fact. Drafted. In the condo lender's file, there was a forwarded email chain between Hayes, Keeley, Laurel, and Silas Brannock. Hayes wrote, "The gift language needs to say no repayment and voluntary family blessing. That keeps the underwriter from asking about restrictions." Voluntary family blessing, the same phrase sitting above my forged signature. I read the email 3 times, and each time the story became less romantic and more surgical. Hayes had not fallen in love and made a messy choice. He had studied my father's money like a map and found the easiest road through my name. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled at Bay Glass Hall the night before the wedding. Keeley wanted sunset photos by the water, catered salmon, and a champagne toast under hanging lights. I was invited because not inviting me would have looked cruel, and my family cared deeply about cruelty only when it could be photographed. My mother sent a text that morning. "Please dress nicely and do not bring tension. This weekend is about healing." I almost laughed. They had stolen the medicine and were asking the wound not to bleed. Imogen told me to bring only what the room needed to understand. "Too much paper looks like rage," she said. "The right paper looks like truth." So, I prepared a thin navy folder with 4 documents: the venue payment summary listing my fund as the source, the forged gift letter, my hospital time card proving I was at work when I supposedly signed it, and Hayes's email drafting the phrase that appeared on the forged document. The rest stayed with Imogen and Eamon, ready for court, lenders, investigators, and anyone else who needed more than a family's shocked silence. Before I left, I opened my father's cedar box one more time. The photo of me in front of that old cottage had started to curl at the edge. I touched his handwriting. "Do not let anyone tell you that being strong means needing nothing." For 6 years, I had treated need like a stain. I had been proud of how little trouble I caused. That pride had almost cost me everything he tried to protect. I put the note back, closed the box, and drove to my sister's rehearsal dinner in a dark green dress I had bought on clearance 3 years earlier for an interview. It was plain, serious, and mine. That felt important. The evening was beautiful. I will give Keeley that. The bay outside the windows held the last pink light of the day. White flowers climbed the posts. Candles floated in glass bowls. Hayes stood near the bar in a blue suit, laughing with 2 men I recognized from his new business website. Keeley moved through the room like a woman already starring in her own memory. My mother wore silver and kept glancing at me, checking for cracks. I gave her none. I hugged an aunt. I complimented the flowers. I let Hayes avoid my eyes. Calm is not always peace. Sometimes calm is a locked door. Dinner began with little speeches. Hayes's father welcomed Keeley into the family. A bridesmaid told a story about Keeley always getting what she wanted if she smiled long enough. People laughed. I looked down at my water glass and thought, yes, she did. Then Keeley stood. She held Hayes's hand and looked around the room with wet eyes. "I know our love story surprised some people," she said, and several faces flicked toward me before looking away. "But sometimes life moves people where they truly belong. This wedding is proof that love finds the right person, even after a hard road." Hayes squeezed her fingers. My mother smiled like she had survived something noble. That was my moment. Not because I wanted drama, but because she had just called stolen money love. I stood slowly, folder in one hand. The room turned, curious at first, then careful. I looked at Keeley, then Hayes, then my mother. My voice came out lower than I expected. "You're right about one thing," I said. "Life does move people where they belong. but stolen money leaves records on the way. The room went so quiet I could hear the water against the pier outside. Keely's smile stayed on her face, but it stopped being alive. "Maren," my mother said softly, warning tucked inside my name. I opened the folder. I placed the first page on the table nearest the center. "This is the payment summary from Bay Glass Hall. The wedding deposit came from the Ashford Legacy Home Fund." I placed the second page beside it. "This is the gift letter used to move that fund. It says I gave my father's money to Keely as a blessing for this marriage." A few people leaned forward. Hayes went still. I placed the third page down. "This is my hospital timecard. It proves I was at work when that letter says I appeared in front of a notary." Then I placed the fourth page down last. "And this is Hayes's email, drafting the exact language that appears above the signature that is not mine." No one spoke. The silence had weight. It pressed against the windows, the candles, the perfect flowers. My aunt put a hand over her mouth. One of Hayes's business partners stepped back from the table as if fraud might splash. Keely looked at the documents but did not touch them. Hayes finally said, "This is not what it looks like." It was such a small, tired sentence that I almost felt embarrassed for him. "It is exactly what it looks like," I said. "You used my father's restricted fund to pay for a condo, a business, and this wedding. You used my name to do it." My mother stood then, tears already forming. She was very good at tears. She had used them like curtains for years. "Maren, please," she said. "This is your sister's rehearsal dinner. We can discuss this privately." I looked at her and felt something inside me settle. "Privately is how you did it," I said. "Publicly is how I stop it." Keely snapped, "Stop acting like we ruined your life. You were never going to use that money. You don't even know how to want things." Her voice cracked through the room, sharp and honest. "I wanted a home," I said. "Dad knew that. He wrote it down." Hayes reached for Keely's arm, but she pulled away, too angry to understand she was helping me. "You always had to be the sad, responsible one," she said. "Do you know what it was like growing up next to that? Mom always worrying about you because you were tired. Dad always proud of you because you worked hard. I wanted something that was mine." I nodded once. "So, you took my fiancé." Her face twisted. "He chose me." "Maybe he did," I said. "But he bought the condo with my father's money before he had the courage to tell me." That landed. I saw it move through the room, person to person, changing the story they had been told. Hayes tried to recover. Men like him always think tone can rebuild a collapsed wall. "Maren, I was trying to make the transfer simple. Your mother told us the fund was for family use. I never thought—" I cut him off, not loudly, but completely. "You wrote the phrase, 'voluntary family blessing.' It is in your email. It is on the forged letter. Do not pretend you were confused by the sentence you created." His mouth closed. For the first time since I had known him, Hayes Riddick had no charming answer ready. Imogen Pike stepped from the side of the room. I had not announced she was coming. She had entered quietly after dinner started and stood near the back with Rila, the venue manager. Now she walked forward with a calm that made every eye follow her. "My name is Imogen Pike," she said. "I represent Maren Ashford regarding the Ashford Legacy Home Fund. The documents she has shown you are copies. The originals and related records are already preserved. The fund transfer, the condo down payment, certain business payments, and wedding expenses are now under formal legal dispute. Anyone involved should keep their next statements accurate." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Legal words have their own weather. Rilla looked pale near the wall. I felt bad for her, but not enough to stay quiet. Bayglass Hall has been notified, Imogen continued, that payments connected to this event may be proceeds of a fraudulent transfer. Further handling will happen through counsel. That was the sentence that broke Keely. Not sisterhood, not father's wishes, not my pain. The wedding. The beautiful machine she had built finally shuddered when someone touched its money. "You can't do this," she whispered. I looked at her dress, her ring, the flowers, the man beside her. "I didn't do this," I said. "I found it." My mother sat down like her legs had given out. For a moment, she looked old, truly old, with all her silver makeup and soft tears unable to cover the fear underneath. "Your father would hate this," she said. That one reached me. It slid under my ribs because for 6 years, every hard choice in our family had been passed through the ghost of Maren Ashford. What would Dad want? What would Dad forgive? What would Dad understand? I took his note from my folder, the real one, not a copy, and held it in my hand. "Dad told me not to believe anyone who said being strong meant needing nothing," I said. "You knew I needed help. You knew he left it for me. You used my strength as permission." No one had an answer for that. The room was full of people, but for a few seconds, it felt like only my father's handwriting and I were standing there. Then Hayes's business partner, the older one with a gray beard, quietly put his napkin on the table and left. Another followed. Hayes watched them go with panic rising in his face. Keely saw it too, and something ugly flashed between them. Their perfect love story had lasted until the first legal consequence entered the room. I did not stay for dessert. I gathered my 4 pages, leaving copies with Imogen. At the door, Keely called after me. "Are you happy now?" I turned back. She looked small suddenly, not innocent, but smaller than her dress, smaller than her flowers, smaller than the life she had tried to buy. "No," I said. Happy is not the word for getting back what should never have been stolen, but clear is close enough for tonight. Then I walked out of Bayglass Hall into the cold rain, and for the first time since Hayes left, I did not feel abandoned. I felt returned to myself. The next months were not cinematic. That is the part people skip. Justice did not arrive with music. It arrived in emails, affidavits, lender notices, interviews, and long meetings, where everyone suddenly remembered a different version of events. Silas Brannick, the notary, first claimed I had appeared in person. Then, Imogen sent my hospital time card and the security badge record showing I had entered a restricted hospital area 20 minutes before the notarization and left 7 hours after. Silas changed his story. He said Laurel brought the document and told him I had signed it at home because I was working. That did not save him. Notary rules are not suggestions just because a mother cries. The condo became the first asset tied up. Keely and Hayes had used part of my father's fund for the down payment, and the lender was not amused to learn the gift letter might be forged. Hayes's consulting business lost 2 clients after his partner requested records and saw enough to step away. The wedding did not happen the next day. There was no public announcement at first, just a quiet cancellation, then a storm of family messages I did not answer. My mother wrote that I had humiliated her. Keely wrote that I had destroyed the only beautiful thing she ever had. Hayes wrote one email saying we should talk as 2 people who once loved each other. Imogen told me not to respond, and for once, silence served me instead of them. The settlement came before trial, because documents make brave liars practical. A large portion of the fund was returned through the sale of the condo and liquidation of Hayes's business account. My mother agreed to a repayment schedule secured against her house. Keely signed a civil admission that the gift letter had not been signed by me. Silas faced a notary investigation and lost his commission. The criminal side moved slower, with words like fraud, forged instrument, and conspiracy appearing in letters that looked too plain for the damage they described. I learned that legal language is often calm because it does not need to perform pain. It only needs to record it. People asked if I wanted Hayes back. That question taught me how little some people understand about betrayal. I did not want the man who could study my father's last gift and turn it into a ladder out of our engagement. I did not want the sister who looked at my quiet life and saw an unused account. I did not want the mother who confused keeping the family together with keeping me available. What I wanted was my name back, my signature, my father's intention, my right to need things without apologizing. A year after the rehearsal dinner, I bought a small house on the edge of town, not the cottage from the old photo, but close enough in spirit that I cried when I unlocked the door. It had a narrow kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a view of cedar trees instead of the bay. The porch needed work. The roof would need attention in a few years. It was not fancy. It was safe. On my first night there, I put my father's note in a frame and hung it beside the front door. Not as decoration, as a rule. I still work at St. Bridget, but I do not take every extra shift anymore. Sometimes I come home before dark. Sometimes I buy coffee without checking my balance first. I planted rosemary near the steps because my father used to rub the leaves between his fingers and say every home needed something that remembered the sun. I do not speak directly to my mother or Keely. Everything that must be said goes through attorneys, and that distance has given me more peace than any family apology ever did. I used to think revenge meant becoming cruel enough to make people sorry. I know better now. Revenge, the kind that lets you sleep, is not always fire. Sometimes it is a corrected record. Sometimes it is a frozen account, a notarization log, a timecard, a letter in your father's hand. Sometimes it is standing in a room built with your stolen future and saying, in a voice steady enough for everyone to hear, that the signature is not yours. My sister bought a new life with my fiancé using the money Dad left for me. Then I took it back, not the fiancé, not the wedding, not the years they wasted. I took back the part that still belonged to me, my future, my name, and the safe place my father tried so hard to leave behind. And if someone in your life keeps calling you strong while reaching for what is yours, take this as your sign. Strong does not mean silent. Strong does not mean empty. Strong means you can turn on the lights and let the truth find its own way home. The end commentary, explanation, discussion, and lessons section. Now let's step out of the story for a moment and really talk about what happened here, because this was not just a story about a sister stealing a fiancé. On the surface, yes, that is the painful hook. Maren loved Hayes. She believed he was going to build a future with her. Then he left, and a few months later, he was standing beside her own sister, ready to get married. That alone would be enough to break a person. But the deeper betrayal was not romantic. It was financial, emotional, and legal. Keely did not simply take the man Maren loved. She helped build a new life with him using the very money Maren's father had left to protect her. That is what makes this story so heavy. The betrayal came from every direction at once. Her sister, her fiancé, and even her mother. What makes Maren's journey powerful is that she does not begin as someone looking for revenge. She begins as someone trying to survive. She is working long nights in a hospital basement, cleaning surgical tools, taking extra shifts, checking her bank balance, and trying to keep her life together. She is not living a glamorous life. She is not careless with money. She is not lazy. In fact, she is the exact opposite. She is responsible, disciplined, and quiet. And that is the tragedy of her character. Her family uses her strength against her. They look at her and say, Maren can handle it. Maren always lands on her feet. Maren does not need beautiful things. And slowly, that becomes their excuse to take from her. This is one of the most important ideas in the story. Being strong can become dangerous when the wrong people start seeing your strength as permission. Maren's mother, Laurel, keeps repeating this idea in different ways. She tells Maren she was always stronger than Keely. She acts like Keely needed happiness more. She acts like Maren's needs were less important, because Maren was practical. But strength does not mean a person has no pain. Strength does not mean a person does not need help. Strength does not mean your future can be handed to someone else. This is where the story speaks to a lot of people, because many families have one person who is expected to understand, forgive, adjust, stay quiet, and carry the emotional weight for everyone else. The first major turning point comes at the wedding venue. This is where the story changes from heartbreak to investigation. Maren goes there only to drop off a box. She is not searching for trouble. She is not trying to ruin anything. Then Rila, the venue manager, casually thanks her for the payment from her father's fund. That single line opens the entire hidden world. And this is a strong storytelling moment, because the truth does not come through a dramatic confession. It comes through a small administrative mistake. One person says the wrong thing at the wrong time, and suddenly the lie begins to crack. That feels realistic. In real life, secrets often come out because of one receipt, one email, one letter, one sentence that was not supposed to be heard. After that, Maren does something very important. She does not run to the family group chat. She does not post online. She does not scream at Keely. She does not call Hayes and beg for an explanation. She starts documenting. This is where her character becomes stronger in a deeper way. Earlier, her silence was forced by habit. She stayed quiet because she was trained to keep peace. But later, her quietness becomes strategy. That is a big difference. At first, silence protects the people hurting her. Later, silence protects her case. She learns to turn her calm into control. That is a major emotional shift. When she finds her father's cedar box, the story becomes more than a revenge story. It becomes a story about inheritance, love, and intention. Benton Ashford did not leave money for luxury. He left money for safety. His note: "Do not let anyone tell you that being strong means needing nothing," is the emotional center of the entire story. That line explains everything Maren never had words for. Her father understood her. He knew she would try to carry too much. He knew other people might mistake her responsibility for self-sufficiency. So he created a fund to give her a safe place. That is why the theft is so cruel. Laurel, Keely, and Hayes did not just steal dollars. They stole a father's last act of protection. Now let's talk about Laurel, because she is one of the most complicated characters in this story. She is not written as a cartoon villain. She is not stealing because she wants a yacht or diamonds for herself. She tells herself she is keeping the family together. She tells herself Keely needs a beginning. She tells herself Maren will survive anyway. That is exactly why she is dangerous. Some people do terrible things while using soft language. They do not say, "I stole from you." They say, "I made a hard choice." They do not say, "I betrayed you." They say, "I was protecting the family." Laurel's moral failure is that she uses family love as a cover for theft. She knows Maren did not sign that gift letter. She knows the money was not hers to move. But she wraps the crime in grief, motherhood, and sacrifice. Keely's role is different. Keely feels entitled. She looks at Maren's quiet life and decides Maren does not know how to want anything. That is a very revealing line. Keely does not believe Maren has no needs, because Maren said so. She believes it because believing that makes the theft easier. If Maren would not use the money, then Keely can feel less guilty using it herself. If Maren is practical, then Keely can call herself the one who deserves beauty. This is how selfish people rewrite the world. They turn another person's restraint into waste. They turn another person's patience into weakness. They turn another person's silence into permission. Hayes may be the coldest betrayal in the story because he knew Maren intimately. He knew her work schedule. He knew her financial stress. He knew her father mattered to her. And still, he helped draft the language that moved her father's money away from her. He did not just fall in love with Keely. He participated in the machinery that stole Maren's future. That is why his email is such a powerful piece of evidence. It proves he was not simply standing beside Keely after the fact. He was part of the plan. The phrase voluntary family blessing is especially cruel because it makes Maren look like she approved of the marriage. They used her name to bless the very relationship that humiliated her. This is where the legal side of the story becomes emotionally satisfying. The documents do what emotions cannot do. Maren could tell people, "They hurt me." Some would believe her, some would not. She could say, "Hayes betrayed me." People might call it heartbreak. She could say, "My sister stole from me." People might call it jealousy. But when she places the venue payment summary, the forged gift letter, her hospital time card, and Hayes's email on the table, the story changes. Suddenly, this is not about feelings. It is about records. This is why the line, "I did not raise my voice, I raised the record," fits the spirit of the story. The evidence speaks louder than any argument. The rehearsal dinner scene works because it is not just public humiliation, it is public correction. There is a difference. Maren is not trying to embarrass Keely for fun. She is correcting a false story in the same room where that false story is being celebrated. Keely stands there talking about love finding the right person, while the wedding itself was funded through a forged document. That is why Maren chooses that moment. If she had stayed silent, the family would have continued performing a beautiful lie. The room would have clapped for a love story built on theft. By standing up, Maren does not destroy the truth. She reveals it. One of the strongest moments is when Laurel says, "This is your sister's rehearsal dinner. We can discuss this privately." That sentence shows how control works. When the lie helps them, they make it public. The wedding is public. The speeches are public. The celebration is public. But when Maren brings proof, suddenly they want privacy. That happens often in real life. People hurt you openly. But when you defend yourself, they say, "Not here, not now, don't make a scene." Maren's answer is perfect. "Privately is how you did it. Publicly is how I stop it." That is not cruelty. That is boundary setting. Another important point is that Maren does not try to win Hayes back. This story would become weaker if her revenge was about getting the man again. Hayes is not the prize. He is part of the evidence. Maren's real goal is not romantic revenge. Her real goal is restoration. She wants her name back, her father's intention back, her financial future back, her right to need things back. This is mature storytelling because it does not confuse justice with jealousy. Maren is not fighting because Keely got Hayes. She is fighting because they used fraud to take what her father left for her. The ending also matters. The story does not end with Maren becoming rich overnight or laughing at everyone from a mansion. It ends with a small safe house, rosemary by the steps, fewer extra shifts, and her father's note framed by the door. That is a peaceful ending, not an exaggerated one. And because of that, it feels more earned. The real victory is not that Keely's wedding collapsed. The real victory is that Maren can finally live without apologizing for needing security. She's not trying to become bigger than everyone. She's trying to become whole again. Now, let's take the lessons from this story because there are many. The first lesson is simple. Quiet people still have limits. Just because someone does not argue every time does not mean they agree. Just because someone forgives small disrespect does not mean they will accept a major betrayal. Maren's family misunderstood her silence. They thought silence meant weakness. But silence can also mean someone is watching, thinking, and waiting for the right moment to speak with proof. The second lesson is that family does not erase accountability. A mother, sister, fiancé, cousin, or spouse can still do something wrong. Blood does not turn theft into borrowing. Love does not turn fraud into sacrifice. When people use the word family only after they are caught, we should be careful. Family should protect people before the damage happens, not excuse the people who caused it afterward. The third lesson is that documents matter. In emotional situations, people can twist words. They can deny conversations. They can call you confused, tired, jealous, dramatic, or greedy. But records are harder to manipulate. A time card, a notary log, an email, a payment summary, a bank statement, a contract. These things can protect the truth when people try to rewrite the story. Maren's strength was not only emotional, it was practical. She gathered the right proof before making the accusation. The fourth lesson is that being the strong one should never mean being the forgotten one. Many people are praised for being easy, patient, independent, and low maintenance, but sometimes that praise becomes a trap. People stop checking on them. People assume they need less. People take more from them because they complain less. This story reminds us that strong people still deserve care, fairness, and protection. The fifth lesson is that a person's pain can explain their choices, but it does not automatically excuse them. Laurel had grief. Laurel had fear. Laurel may have felt pressure after Benton died. But grief did not give her permission to forge Maren's name. Fear did not give her the right to move money meant for one daughter into another daughter's life. We can understand why someone felt desperate and still hold them responsible for what they did. The sixth lesson is that revenge is not always about hurting people back. Sometimes revenge means removing access. Maren does not need to scream forever. She does not need to argue with Keeley every week. She lets attorneys handle it. She creates distance. She protects her money, her name, and her peace. That is a powerful kind of revenge because it is not fueled by chaos. It is fueled by clarity. The seventh lesson is about love. Real love does not require someone else's stolen future. If Hayes and Keeley's relationship needed Maren's money, forged papers, and family lies to survive, then it was never a clean love story. It was a performance. And when truth entered the room, the performance collapsed. So when we look at Maren's full journey, we see a woman moving from survival to awareness, from awareness to proof, from proof to confrontation, and from confrontation to peace. She starts in a hospital basement, invisible and exhausted. She does not become cruel. She becomes clear. She does not take back the man. She takes back herself. And maybe that is the biggest message of this story. Some people will call you strong because it benefits them when you stay quiet. But real strength is not silence. Real strength is knowing when the silence has done its job and when the truth needs to walk into the room with paperwork in its hand. Maren's story teaches us that you do not have to become loud to become powerful. You do not have to become hateful to demand justice. Sometimes the calmest person at the table is the one holding the document that changes everything.